Hello and welcome everybody. Welcome back to Comedian MTG. My name is Ian. Today's episode, we're going to be doing an old-fashioned top 16 breakdown. This week is the Top Deck Invitational, so that is something I'm preparing for a lot, but I want to give you a top 16 to check out from the week prior. So we're going to be covering the Laughing Dragon Expo LA event that happened as of time of recording last weekend. Had some pretty cool spicy decks show up for this top 16. Actually, a lot of spicy decks for this tournament, so it's some really cool stuff, and we'll be able to talk about all of those. We have a couple sponsors this episode. We'll be talking about them a little bit more later, but thank you to Tales of Adventure, AltTrades Media LLC, and Heavy Play. Let's check out some of these decks. The first one is starting off as a heater. We have Thada Adel Acquisitor as our first commander. This is a mono blue deck. Now, Thada historically has seen a little bit of play in cEDH, but one of the things that brought it sort of into any sort of relevance was the printing of the One Ring. Now, this sort of expectation that you can find a One Ring in most cEDH decks kind of made Thada like, oh, hey, the worst case scenario, I can go get this very playable draw card spell, right? So that sort of gave this deck new life, and you can see actually like a lot of choices here in the artifact section that sort of account for that. Things like Manifold Key and stuff like that, and Voltaic Key at times. Yep, Voltaic Key as well. So we definitely can see that there. Definitely some pretty cool stuff as far as that part's concerned. And the rest of the deck is this sort of control mid-range hybrid, right? Now, to note, like they're playing things like Dream's Grasp and Twiddle, that's not Twitch, stuff like that is literally meant to untap One Rings, right? So this is a deck that is basically built around this idea that your opponents are going to have a One Ring. And if they don't, it's a little bit awkward, but sometimes you can also just go tutor your own, right? And there's a lot of artifact tutors in here, things like Tezzeret, stuff like that. We have card advantage haters to stop your opponent's card advantage, things like Narset. We have Walking Ballista, which is going to be one of the things for like the outlets of the deck. Now, if you notice, there's a couple ways to make infinite mana on the deck, things like Hullbreaker Horror and stuff like that. And is that actually Narumeha with, is there a Ghostly Flicker in here? There is. Okay, so a number of different ways to make infinite mana in this list. In the mono blue colors, we also have Isochron Scepter and Lithoform Engine, which also combo with Dramatic Reversal to untap all your artifacts infinitely. Bunch of ways to make infinite mana here, and then pumping them into things like, you know, bouncing a One Ring over and over again with Hullbreaker Horror, or pumping it all into a Walking Ballista. So definitely a super spicy list here to start things off. I mean, I can't even go into detail about all of the really cool stuff that's here in this deck, but needless to say, there is quite a lot. We have disruptive pieces like Disruptor Flute, Vexing Bauble, Grafdigger's Cage, stuff like that. We've got our classics, Mind Over Matter comboing with the One Ring, you know, just all sorts of crazy stuff here, and definitely a wild way to start off this top 16 with a very spicy blue control mid-range deck here in Thada Adel Acquisitor. And here we go to Shuko Shuffle. Please, no ban. Yeah, we're shuffling some Shukos here with this Nadu list. This one definitely sort of got some pieces from different versions of Nadu historically. Bristly Bill, sometimes more in the mid-range-ish version. I will say I did play against Bill rather recently, and the card put in a decent amount of work, you know, when you don't have your zero equippers here. What in goodness sakes is Lapis Lazuli Talisman? You can pay 3 generic to untap a permanent and use it only when a blue spell is successfully cast, and only once for each spell. What? This is such a weird inclusion. I have never seen this card. I mean, you can target a creature once every time you cast a blue spell for 3 generic mana. That seems rough. I mean, untapping a Cradle is pretty nice, I guess. But I can't imagine. I mean, it's only when you trigger blue spells, right? So wouldn't you want the one that triggers off green spells? Huh. Okay, sure. I don't know. But yeah, we have all of our free equippers here, as well as Unctus. This is a pretty classic, apart from that one sort of stopgap there. Apart from that, this is a pretty classic Nadu list here. We've got our Kitten to reset our bird if we need to. We've got our 2 enablers of Aphedo and Seeker of Skybreak, and Unctus there for our basically green-blue Adnaz. Classic Nadu stuff. A lot of enablers in this version. I know it's not like definitely still a lot of interaction here, but there's definitely a lot of ways to make sure the Nadu plan is happening kind of no matter what. Speaking of Nadu, we have Dr. Boofensmer. I don't know if I should have said that one. Here with a Nadu list as well. And whenever we have identical commanders, the best thing to do is compare to the most recent list. So let's fire one of those up. So we have a 35, whoa, 35 card difference here between these two Nadu lists. Wow, that is like an insane amount of differences here between these decks. In the Nadu no special name version, we have a lot more counter spells and permission. This one is definitely more of the turbo landfall version, playing the Ashaya combos, having Thoracle in the deck, playing Tireless Provisioner and 3-mana Nissa. Yeah, so this is definitely much more into the turbo landfall camp and much more turbo in general, like Mox Opal, Mana Vault, Conqueror's Flail, stuff like that. So very, very hyper aggressive version of Nadu. This one also seeming like maybe because this was a no proxy tournament, we've got a couple extra basics than you might expect in this list. But yeah, some pretty cool stuff here and some notable cards missing. Things like Gaia's Cradle missing from Nadu deck number 2. Tropical Island. So yeah, that definitely seems like a budget thing. Earthcraft, surprisingly, in the version, not running a bunch of basics. And we don't have the two, oh, actually, no, a Pheto Alchemist too. Honestly, a lot of the Unctus either. Wow, missing a lot of the stuff that I traditionally associate with Nadu. And Unctus and is one of the ones, and Pheto definitely are the two of the pieces I would consider more of the uncuttable ones. Cradle as well, right? So I mean that one at least makes sense budget wise. Same thing with My Bird Trap, but it, yeah. So this definitely feels like some availability inclusions here with these versions of Nadu, but I'm definitely curious. Oh, and No Seeker too. Wow, that's crazy. So many cards I have come to expect in Nadu, not here in this 14th place deck. Pretty cool stuff. Before we talk about any other decks, and don't worry, we're done with the Nadus, we're going to be talking about Heavy Play. Heavy Play has been partnered with the channel for a little while now, and it's been an awesome collaboration. Heavy Play is a really awesome deck box and sleeve company that makes sick products, like genuinely super awesome products. The deck boxes and dice tray in particular are something I'm totally in love with. That in combination with their playmats, so nice. You just fold up the flat playmats, slide them right into your bag. You have a magnetic deck box and tray that are always sticking together, and it's so nice to have everything in one compact zone. Like I feel like my backpack weighs like 30 pounds less because I just have all my Heavy Play stuff in one tight little area, and it's so nice. So I've been super happy using Heavy Play products, and I've been using it at basically every tournament I've been going to. So super sweet stuff. I already really liked the product before we started working together, and then I got them and it was everything I wanted. And if you use code Comedian on your first Heavy Play order, you can actually get 10% off that order. So go check that out. All right, we've got another full heater in the spice menu. We've got Delina rolling the dice. I deal with the description, functional, but not where it needs to be. That's so good. In the top 16 here, we have this Delina Wild Mage deck. This is mono red, double your creature goodness. It's very reminiscent of like the Kiki Jiki deck that we saw at the top 16, or actually 17th place at the Boil. Kiki Jiki in the 99 makes a ton of sense. Opens up a lot of combos in here. This deck specifically reminds me a lot of Rionia. And that is sort of one of the criticisms I have of this list is like, it kind of reminds me of like, why not just play Rionia in the 99 or in the command zone, pardon me. Cause Delina seems like a bit of a smaller version of that. Now costing one less mana is definitely very real, but it also has to go to combat and attack and survive to continue getting value off of it, as opposed to Rionia, which just gets the job done, you know? But the idea here is that when you're attacking, you're rolling a d20. If you get the high roll, you get to make a token and go again. If you get the low roll, you just get to make a token. Pretty classic, right? So you're having things like Dockside, Harmonic Prodigy here to double your Shaman triggers with your commander. You have Will, Blade of the Frontiers. If you're rolling dice, you roll that many and ignore the lowest one. So this is your Krark's Thumb of Dice, which is a wild sentence. But yeah, to be able to pull this off in a cEDH tournament's pretty freaking cool. I mean, we've got a lot of win conditions here. We have breach lines, but also are playing, did I see Weathered Runestone? But also are playing Weathered Runestone. But I guess since you are, there's no Graph Digger's Cage, okay. And so I guess because you're playing Grinding Station with your breach lines, you can crack your own Weathered Runestone when you're trying to win, which is definitely super spicy. We have Cloudstone Curio here, I assume, for your dockside lines, but there's no payoff explicitly for that, except for, I guess you have the payoffs of Professional Facebreaker, which you can also get off Imperial Recruiter, and so there's some lines there. Varchild is definitely one that I was not expecting, making a bunch of warriors, giving them to your opponents. Yeah, this one definitely caught me off guard. Not expecting to really see see that in the CEDH event for sure. The Wildfire Devil, a lot of crazy stuff here in the 99 of this list. It's super sick though. There's so much going on and so many pieces here. This is another one of those lists like Thada where, you know, if I were to go into it all, we'd be here all day for this one list. But Stranglehold's one of those pieces that I've been thinking is kind of underplayed in the current format, given how good things like Oppo and Aven have been. So definitely really cool to see that here as well. Oh, this is just another Quark Slump for dice. This is so crazy. All right, cool stuff here from this list for sure. We have Cut Flow here with Heliod Stack Control. For those who don't know, Heliod the Radiant Dawn is not doing much, but the backside, Heliod the Warped Eclipse allows you to cast spells as though they had flash. All of them, all your spells, just right in the command zone. It's a 7-mana investment to get to this point, but it gets pretty insane. Also, spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each card your opponents have drawn this turn. So the idea is you sort of just flip your Heliod and go, all right, everybody, we're chilling. Until somebody slips up, and then you really punish them for it. And you cast a wheel into a wheel into a wheel, and all of your spells cost like 14 mana cheaper because you're able to just, you know, dump a bunch of mana into the stuff that you're doing. You play things like Prosperity and Time Twister and Windfall and stuff like that to get everybody a bunch of cards, but you have Flash. So you're able to basically pop off on top of a bunch of people. And, you know, by the time your opponents have all drawn a ton of cards here, right, like each player draws X with the Prosperity gets very insane very quickly. Winning through kind of traditional Storm means sometimes you're infinitely looping things like Capsize. There's Dramatic Reversal here for is there an Ice Crown Scepter or just Dramatic Reversal? Just Dramatic Reversal. Cool. Interesting. Blind Obedience here for that kind of manual Storm kill. Chromatic Aura, I'm not sure if there's anything particular with it. I know when I've talked to some of the pilots of this deck before, they talk about looping Coveted Jewel in the deck with Displacer Kitten is one of the potential wins here. You also have Hullbreaker Horror, which is obviously one of the cleaner, easier outs in the deck. And then Teferi Kitten, which Teferi Kitten does not work at instant speed, so that one's more relegated to sorcery speed, but you're kind of locking down everything before you get to that point. And also, if you're drawing through your whole deck, doesn't really need to do the Teferi stuff. And then I'm not really sure what the actual win is here with this deck, because you're looping through, you're time twistering people. I guess you are doing time twister loops, and you can make infinite swans with Swan Song, which is obviously pretty solid there. And then, yeah, I'm not sure if there is. Oh, and then obviously you're looping through Blind Obedience, right? And then killing people that way. So your Time Twister looping through Blind Obedience, all that kind of stuff when you get the deck going and start just really popping off. So cool, crazy stuff here with this list. It's definitely doing a lot of really sick stuff. It's actually a deck I've wanted to play for quite some time and probably should give it a shot because you know, cool flash stuff is a fun way to play the format. We have Tapspace, a name that some folks should be familiar with the Weatherlight cEDH. This is a pretty classic Sisay tutor chains list. Tapspace is someone who has done well in a number of different, I believe, online tournaments before, unless I'm crazy. And yeah, here it is, pretty classic tutor chain Sisay stuff. This one is playing the Cultist of the Absolute Lines. We have 29 lands, which I do appreciate a good land base in your Sisay deck. You have the Cultist stuff here with no Chromatic Aura, I believe. Yeah, so this is just value Cultist here, LQR to protect a bunch of your permanents. Not anything super mind-blowing. Love seeing the one sorcery here for Sisay. Definitely gives you a little bit of idea of how that deck goes. We have Gilded Drake in here, which I know is a hot contention between the Sisay pilots on whether this card is good enough. But we got some cool stuff, and good to see the Polywog adapted into the deck. I think it's a solid piece pretty clearly, and yeah, Pilot is agreeing here by including it in this list. So cool stuff. Congrats to Tapspace in your top 16. We have WOP Agent. I hope that's a thing I don't understand, maybe. We have the bluest of clues and fill in the blank here by Amped Gaming. This is a Lucas Will the Wise blue, also known as Baby Blues Clues or Clue Farm, any of the above names. This is basically what happens if you swap out Timna and Crom for an infinite mana outlet in the command zone with Will. Or I guess infinite bounce outlet / Chthonian Nightmare outlet with Will. This is also just statistically a bit faster than Blue Farm. This deck feels a little bit more like the baby between Rogsai and Blue Farm, which is what you usually see with this list. But, you know, on the other hand, not too many artifacts here with this list, which is surprising for a more aggressively inclined list in today's metagame. You got Necropotent stuff here with, I know there's at least Born Upon a Wind, but I didn't see Valley Flood Caller, which is a little bit surprising to me. It seems like pretty solid here, although it does not work with the Baron or the Baron Bowmaster or Chthonian Nightmare lines, obviously because Chthonian Nightmare is stuck at being sorcery speed too, right? You have the rest of it being like a lot of classic Blue Farm-esque tech, right? Ad Naz lines. You have Mnemonic Betrayal and Beseech, and you're winning with Underworld Breach, all that kind of classic Blue Farmy stuff, but just swapping out the commanders for the ability to win with some creature combos, right? Swapping that in as the combos of choice compared to the classic Blue Farm stuff that says, hey, we just need Thoracle and we just need Breach. We have 007X700 with Boyfriend Carry Me, and by that I mean Blue Farm Carry Me. This is a Blue Farm deck. Delny starting to see a little more play in some of these Blue Farm lists. Originally that was considered maybe a spicier option. I've seen it a couple times at this point. We have Dam in here with this version of the list too. It's pretty solid. A different board wipe than we're used to with Blue Farm. Usually it's more of a deluge deck, but we've got a Dam in here to switch things up a little bit. And the rest of it is pretty by the books Blue Farm. Actually a little more artifacts than we're used to in modern Blue Farm decks. A lot of people are going down to that 13, 14, 12 kind of artifact range, but this one keeping up the artifact count a little bit high with Strict Serenade in the list, maybe keeping things a little bit easier, grinding into late game, hitting those abolishers, Docksides, Ranger Captains, etc. So yeah, sweet. Congrats to our pilot for their Blue Farm run. We have Boros Armory here with Boros Armory Ballista. So this actually happens to be someone I worked with earlier this week on this deck before they went to this tournament. So yeah, Boros Armory hit me up about coaching, and we went over this deck and sort of got it up and ready. They said that a lot of the changes did really well for them, and that, there's definitely still a little bit of comfort issues with like having changed the deck a decent amount. Boros Armory is someone who plays a lot of Boros decks, and is taking the Zerda deck here. For those who don't know, Zerda goes infinite with Basalt and Grim Monolith, being able to make their untap abilities cheaper than their tap abilities. Was very happy to hear that they had a lot of, so they weren't originally playing Dockside loops with Cloudstone Curio and Meticulous Excavation, although did Meticulous? Yeah, it did make the final cut. Cool. They said they actually won one of their games immediately with that combo, so it was pretty sick to see that. But the deck is a lot of sort of mid-range pieces that allow you to kind of get to these combos faster, right? So you're trying to get your pieces to make your infinite mana very, very quickly, which Zerda enables. And then pumping it to things like Walking Ballista and stuff like that as your outlets. Godo is technically an outlet with a single red mana because you go get Godo, go get Helm, do the thing. Thran Spider allows you to draw your entire deck. Another way to outlet infinite mana there. So there's definitely a lot of little quirky outlets. Diviner's Wand's actually one of the really cool ones, especially because Diviner's Wand allows you specifically to use your artifact tutors to go grab Diviner's Wand, and equipment tutors, which Boros has a lot of equipment tutors, maybe not the most artifact explicit tutors, right? So things like Stoneforge Mystic and stuff like that actually become kind of decent. Steel Shaper's Gift at finding you your outlet for infinite mana, right? So there's a lot of ways to sort of channel that infinite mana as soon as you get it. Staff of Domination's another way. Mirage Mirror doesn't technically, but there's a lot of ways that you can immediately turn that into something that does do that, right? So there's a lot of really cool stuff there, and yeah, this list is pretty sweet, and it was just cool to also having had just worked with this pilot to immediately see them make top 16 with this list right after we talked about it, and it sounded like some of the changes we went over went pretty well. There was definitely more equipment in their older version, a little bit less focus on some of these different combos. As I mentioned, the Dockside stuff was not as much in there, and we added a little more interaction here with this version. Before we get to our next deck, I want to thank TOA Magic. Check out toamagic.com and use code COMEDIAN to get a percentage off of your order. TOA has an amazing selection of singles available, and you can use their website to be able to place an order and actually pick it up at location at a number of different events. TOA always has a booth at some of these major events, so you should definitely go check it out. We have a super cool username, Chalupacabra, here with Thrastavesh Kitten Breaker. LDXP, Los Angeles 2024. Anyways, this is a pretty interesting Sultai mid-range deck here with Thrasios and Tevesh. Definitely very value heavy, very much I'm focused on gaining a bunch of value with my cards and my creatures type of deck for sure. We have Freed from the Real here, able to go infinite with, I'm assuming, just Bloom Tender in this deck, but oh no, there's actually Sanctum Weaver instead of Bloom Tender, which I like because it has another toughness. Also, Kinnan makes Birds of Paradise also go infinite with those cards as well. We have some Razaketh lines here in this deck. We have Hullbreaker able to go infinite with our commander and any sort of zero drops bouncing this back and forth. We have our classic Thassa's Oracle lines here. Kinnan, I don't think. Oh no, we do have Basalt Monolith. Yeah, so Kinnan Basalt Monolith is one of the combos. So this deck is pretty jam-packed full of combos, and I actually like that because one of the sort of criticisms against Sultai in the modern metagame is that like it's a strategy that doesn't quite do as much as the other decks in certain areas, right? And so I like sort of jamming it full of different combos here, as well as having good interaction, good, responses and stuff like that, because now you sort of have a bunch of different outlets for what you're trying to do with your deck. So there's one animate dead here. I think I saw a reanimate. Okay, and then is there a single entomb? Is that even, yes, one entomb. Is that really the only way to put this in the graveyard? So definitely slim on ways to make this Razaketh happen, but also just calling ritualing into it is totally fair as well. Some pretty cool stuff here from this Altai list. Definitely very grindy, very mid-rangey. Curious what the Tyvar inclusion is for. I'm wondering if it's like just because you're on freed lines or what that's all about. Oh no, there is Bloom Tender here too. I totally missed that. Cool, but yeah, a lot of combos here in this cEDH deck, and curious to hear about the Tyvar inclusion specifically, if the pilot's out there, or if anyone who knows the pilot knows how that works. We have another lovely gentleman from Amped Gaming here, Tivit Pivot by Mr. Scotty Baker. This is Tivit. Scotty is known for playing this Tivit list. It is sort of his thing. He piloted it very well in the Mox Masters Invitationals when those were happening, and yeah, definitely someone known just for really liking this Tivit deck. We haven't seen Tivit on one of these breakdowns in a long time. It's just sort of indicative of how it's doing. 27 lands, definitely a little low for what I expect from normal Tivit deck here, but the decks are always just, jam-packed full of their value engines, able to, win with the Time Sieve being the one card combo with their commander, as well as having Thassa's Oracle lines and stuff like that. Traditionally, Displacer Kitten and Teferi lines as well. And I like the Karn here. Tivit's one of the most egregious Dockside feeding decks in the format, and so having answers against Dockside's pretty good. Now, Dauntless and Karn and Blended Beings definitely give you a plethora of answers to at least buy you some time, if not stop them entirely. So apart from that, this is one of the, some people call this a control deck. Some people call it a slow mid-range deck, right? That's sort of semantics at this point, but definitely one of the more controlling decks in the format, and just giving you that full high card quality Esper goodness. Our last deck before the top four is Liege of Laughter. This is a Talion control deck by Will the Vermin. Pretty classic Talion control stuff. Talion, for those who don't know, is the if you can't call Tivit control, this deck definitely is. Talion is an oppressive, slow, grindy control deck that seeks to really just snipe your opponents out of the game after resolving a Talion, and then just attritioning value, attritioning value, attritioning value. I like the spice in this one. I'm seeing Valley Floodcaller up here. It's also playing one of my favorite cards of all time that nobody plays, Tasha's Hideous Laughter, which I think is a super crazy card if you can cast it once or twice, specifically twice, to just sort of remove win conditions out of your opponent's decks. It's also if you can recur it, just a way to actually win the game by just stripping your opponents of win cons because they all go into exile. And then also, the Leyline of Anticipation here, which seems to be just a card picking up popularity. We had Rogsai winning with it at Fishbowl, and now we have just a Leyline in the 99 of this deck here. And don't get me wrong, if I'm playing a blue-black control deck and I open up a Leyline hand, I am feeling on top of the world. And I kind of like this new kick of just everybody playing Leyline decks. It's kind of fun, and it's definitely the kind of nonsense that I really enjoy. So congrats to our pilot here for making the top 16 and making 5th place with our best record outside the top 16 or outside the top 4 with this super spicy, flashy Talion list. All about it. Before we get into our top 4, I want to thank our last sponsor of this episode, AltTrades Media LLC. Now, you may have seen these tokens on a number of different feature matches, or if you've played with me in person, you've probably seen them there. AltTrades makes these beautiful black and white tokens, and they are so helpful for basically any sort of tokens you need in a cEDH game. They come in a very nice, sleek pack. They can easily fit inside a deck box. You can even get multiple different sets of them. They have an awesome Etsy store, and I believe there is still code Comedian up and available to get you a % off your order there. But they've got the super cool Thopter playmat. They have their mana pack, and they're doing actually a number of different customs nowadays too. So if you hit them up independently of their Etsy store as well, you can often get some really cool stuff going on. But they've also got a ton of different promotions that usually happen with like some of these foil tokens and stuff like that. I've got actually some of the foil packs, and I truly adore them. So really cool art, really vibrant stuff, and it shows up so nice on a playmat to have these nice white backgrounds and really distinct art. Helps to keep your boards super organized, and in a time of Nadu, a lot of folks nowadays need things like their zombie tokens and stuff like that to make sure that they're representing those board states nice and clean. Now we have Banworthy here with Boros Time Machine. This is an Akiri Fearless Voyager deck. Akiri is a 1 in Boros for whenever you attack a player with 1 or more equipped creatures, draw cards. If you attack 3 players with equipped creatures, you draw 3. And then it says white, you may unattach an equipment from a creature you control. If you do, tap it gains indestructible, which I feel like is flavor text at this point. By the definition of Time Machine, I was able to gather that this deck is attempting to loop infinite turns in Boros. Now, how does one do that? Weird. I feel like those are all blue effects. Well, you get either an emblem with Gideon the Trial, with his last ability that says you can't lose the game if you have a Gideon, or you find a way to recur Angel's Grace, which is doable. I don't exactly know how you're recurring every turn if you're doing other stuff. But then what you do is, a Sundial of the Infinite also allows you to do this, because you would end turns that you would potentially lose on, because the turns that you're trying to loop are from Last Chance, Warrior's Call, and Final Fortune. So you're taking these cards that normally will kill you at the end of your extra turn and saying, no, I'm actually not going to die from this. Now you may be asking yourself, how do you survive to do this? Well, that involves you using those pieces and then having a card called Mistveil Plains, which enters the battlefield tapped. And then for white, you can put target card from your graveyard on the bottom of your library. Okay, sure. So you have a way to use this land to put them on the bottom of your library. But how are you getting those cards over and over again? Yeah, this is a Sunforger deck. So with Sunforger, you can go grab the instant Tithe, which allows you to grab a Plains card. Basically, as soon as you get Sunforger in this deck, you're going, cool, grab Mistveil Plains off of Tithe, play the Mistveil Plains, and then next time I'm activating Sunforger, I'm getting Final Fortune, Chance for Glory, Last Chance, or Warrior's Oath, and I am just looping infinite turns in Boros in cEDH in this deck that also just has a bunch of crazy equipment in it. There's also Mask of Immolation and Mortar Pod combos with Cole, the Forge Master, I believe. So this is whenever another non-token you control dies, if it's enchanted or equipped, return to its owner's hand. So if you have like a Rograk, I think it's literally just Rograk that works with it. I guess Dockside also works with these as well. But you're basically able to like sack them, put them back into your hand, loop those over and over again. So those are more of the interesting ones. We have Dan Lewis here, which is non-creature, non-equipment artifacts are equipment. Yeah, I'm not really sure how that one's helping in this situation. I guess your mana crypts are equipments or whatever it might be, which is kind of funny. You have Barrow Headmaster equips cost less, which I know that does help with some of the loops with the Cole the Forge Master stuff. This deck is, like crazy and all over the place and wild, but somehow it made the top 4 of the cEDH tournament, playing, not a lot of stacks pieces here, just sort of turbo equipment blitz, I guess. Like Tranith and Avon are like really the only pieces of like aggressive stacks here in this deck, and the rest of it is just, hey, my equipment are gonna gain a bunch of value and sort of turbo kill you all. And also this aggravated assault for rework Cleaver lines, I'm assuming. Okay, cool. This is a wildly spicy cEDH list, and super sick to see it here in the top 4 of this tournament. Definitely was not expecting a Boros Akiri Fearless Voyager list here in this top 4 for sure. We have Cody Wample here with Yuro, please take 0. Which I do appreciate, because that is like the biggest error of, or not error, but like the biggest loss of Yuriko pilots is when they hit people with a bunch of ninjas and just flip like lands and stuff and ornithopters and whatnot. This is pretty classic Yuriko stuff here. We have some cool cards here with like Harvester of Misery and stuff like that. But yeah, this is Yuriko, mid-range Yuriko, trying to gain a bunch of value by attacking with creatures, ninjutsuing out your ninjas instead of those creatures on 6 MDFCs. Because instead of hitting land drops, what if you hit MDFCs, which are land drops with upside? We have the brand new Eagle Vision here from Assassin's Creed, which I'm really happy about because Cal and I talked about that in the set review and said this feels like a very good Yuriko card. Turns out it was. We have Surprise and Legate, which is one of my favorite Yuriko cards of all time. If someone else controls a mountain, you have an island, boom, free 1/3 flyer for 4. Instead of 4, I should say. We have the Hydroelectric Specimen, which is like a Yuriko attacker and a land and a target redirector. Cool stuff here from Yuriko. Mockingbird, very good new pickup for this deck for sure. Yeah, a lot of 6 stuff. Oh, I actually really like the Mockingbird into Yuriko interaction because then you pick it up and reset the clone. That's some cool stuff. I like that a lot. Yeah, Yuriko deck that's been sort of riding the struggle bus for quite some time, and here we have it making the top 4 of this tournament. So congrats to our pilot on your top 4 cut. I just really like this description too. My version of the official Yuriko list foiled out because I do not need to eat. We have Dippin' Dots with Timna Likes Cats 2. We have something I haven't seen in a very long time, which is Displacer Teferi in Blue Farm. We have a Blue Farm here list in our top 4. Valley of Floodcaller, loving the addition to Blue Farm, and Appear into the Abyss, which I have not seen in Blue Farm in quite a long time. This is more of the 13 artifact Blue Farm list that I was kind of talking about earlier. And yeah, we have a bunch of enchantments here, a bunch of cool stuff, and can't be surprised enough by the cat combo in here. We love that. Yeah, it was definitely an early progenitor of cat combo in Blue Farm. I'm a big fan of Teferi in the archetype, even if you're not playing cat. So it's kind of cool to see that after quite a long time of not seeing it in the deck in general. Pier, one of the cards I'm most suspicious of this entire deck and kind of in the format right now. But hey, if you made it work, you made it work. That's super cool stuff. Yeah, still on Nas too. Wow, what is the Nas curve here? I feel like you're taking a big dome of damage here. 1.3. Okay, so less than Rock size still. Sweet. Yeah, cool stuff from this Blue Farm list. Not often you see innovation in Blue Farm, so hey, we'll take it. We have Wheels and the Legman by Snack. This is Rogsai. Pretty classic Rogsai stuff. They are on 23 lands now. They're just keep going down and down and down in those land drops. We have Necrodom and Necropotence. We haven't really talked about Rogsai a whole ton since these come out, but revolutionized this deck. Between those two and Flare of Duplication, and the fact that they get Valley Floodcaller now, this deck has gotten set after set after set in a row of actually really good pieces for the archetype, which is definitely not hurt. It's definitely done very, very good stuff for Rogsai. The numbers of the deck were already doing really well, and now suddenly with a lot of these new printings, you know, the deck that was normally struggling to convert in top 16 is now doing pretty well, and it's becoming one of the best performing decks in the format. There also seems to be a consensus that Rhystic Tutor, I guess, is just better than Grim Tutor that they were playing before, because I guess it's easier to cast, and when you're casting this card, I guess the assumption is it's in a window where your opponents can't afford to pay the 2 for Rhystic Tutor. Yeah. Oh no, this is in addition to Grim Tutor too. Wow. I am not a believer in this card, but you know, if that's your bag, I love that for you. I'm curious to see it in action for sure, and I'll sort of leave it at that. But yeah, Rogsai doing Rogsai stuff here with this deck. No Apple of Eden, which I know some of the lists have moved on to add pretty recently. But yeah, pretty classic Rogsai, going fast, zooming hard, and taking down this tournament. So congrats to our pilot here. And that concludes our top 16 of LDXP Los Angeles. What y'all think of that one? Were there any decks that surprised you? I would hope so, because some of these are spicy as hell. Definitely one of the spicier tournaments we've covered in a long time. Definitely decks that are far from on the beaten path here for this one. The fact that there's only like one Sisay in this tournament, and we have Zerda and Flip Helia, Delina, Theta Adele, Akiri in the top 4. A lot of crazy stuff here, but I want to hear what's your favorite inclusion down in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all for the sponsors of this video. Congrats to all of our players here in the top 16, and I hope you all had a good one, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.
I know I've been quiet for a minute, I've been grinding, still in it, I've been counting these digits. Excuse me, I know I've been quiet for a minute, but I'm back on my business. If you see me, don't trip, just excuse me. Wrong if I do, wrong if I don't. That's why I do lie if I do, lie if I don't. The proof is in the story, take a seat. Excuse me.